For many people, saving money feels like walking up a downward escalator. No matter how careful they are, no matter how disciplined they try to be, progress still feels out of reach. They earn money, they plan their expenses, they try to be responsible, and yet, month after month, they feel like they are standing in the same place. This is not a lack of effort, and it is not simply a personal failure. To understand why saving money feels impossible for so many people, we need to look beyond individual choices and examine how modern money systems actually work. The most common explanation is simple and often repeated. People do not save money because they lack discipline. They spend too much. They do not budget properly. They make poor financial decisions. This explanation is appealing because it is easy to understand. It places responsibility entirely on the individual. If the problem is behavior, then the solution feels simple. Just try harder. Just be more careful. But this explanation fails to answer an important question. Why do people across very different professions, income levels, and lifestyles struggle in the same way? Teachers, office workers, engineers, healthcare professionals. When the same outcome appears again and again across millions of households, the cause is rarely personal behavior alone. Many people genuinely believe they are doing something wrong. They blame themselves for not saving enough. They feel behind, even when they are working full-time. This belief is powerful because it keeps attention focused inward. It prevents people from questioning the environment around them. When responsibility is framed as purely personal, systemic pressure becomes invisible. This framing has an important effect. When people believe the problem is personal, they look for personal fixes. They adjust habits. They cut small expenses. They feel guilty about spending. But they rarely question the structure they are operating inside. A system that remains unquestioned is a system that remains unchanged. Many people compare themselves to others and assume they are falling behind. They see social media, public lifestyles, and surface-level success and conclude that everyone else is doing better. What they rarely see is how much of modern financial life is supported by debt. Borrowing has become normal, so has financial strain. This creates a quiet distortion. People believe they are personally failing, even when many others are simply sustaining appearances. When comparison replaces context, saving begins to feel not just difficult, but pointless. This sense of pointlessness matters. When effort does not lead to visible progress, belief quietly erodes. People do not stop caring about saving. They stop believing it will change anything. And when belief disappears, saving stops feeling urgent, even when it remains important. Over time, incomes have increased, but essential costs have increased faster. Housing costs have risen steadily. Healthcare expenses continue to grow. Education has become more expensive. Insurance and transportation now take a larger share of income than before. These are not optional purchases. They are built into modern life. When essential costs grow faster than income, saving becomes secondary. It becomes something that happens only if there is money left over. For many households, there is nothing left. Saving does not fail because people do not try. It fails because the system treats saving as optional, not foundational. These costs rarely feel dramatic. They increase gradually, year after year. Small adjustments that seem manageable in isolation. But over time, these increases compound. What once felt affordable slowly becomes restrictive. The change is quiet, but the impact is constant. Because these changes are gradual, they rarely trigger alarm. Each increase feels manageable on its own. Together, they remove flexibility. What disappears is not income, but margin. And without margin, saving becomes fragile. As essential costs rise, flexibility disappears. When more income is locked into fixed expenses, there is less room to absorb disruption. Small emergencies become destabilizing. Minor setbacks create lasting stress. In this environment, saving is no longer about growth. It becomes about protection. But protection is difficult when margins are thin, and thin margins are now common. Thin margins change how money is experienced. A single unexpected expense can undo months of effort. Stability becomes conditional. Security becomes temporary. Saving feels less like building a future and more like holding ground. Modern financial systems also create a timing problem. Income arrives on a schedule, weekly, bi-weeks, monthly. Expenses, however, arrive continuously. Rent does not wait. Bills do not pause. Unexpected costs appear without warning. Saving requires consistent surplus. But surplus only exists when income reliably exceeds obligations. For many people, obligations come first, automatically. Saving is whatever remains afterward. Often, nothing remains. This structure forces people into short-term thinking. Financial decisions become reactive instead of deliberate. The focus shifts from building stability to avoiding disruption. In this environment, saving feels less like progress and more like a temporary pause before the next obligation arrives. Spending has been optimized for speed and convenience. One tap, one swipe, one click. Payments happen instantly, often without friction or reflection. Saving, by contrast, requires effort. It requires planning. It requires restraint. It requires delay. This imbalance is not accidental. Financial systems benefit when money moves. Transactions generate fees. Interest generates revenue. Ongoing payments create predictable profit. Money that stays still does not serve the system in the same way. A system designed around movement does not naturally support accumulation for individuals. This does not require intent or coordination. Systems evolve toward what they reward. When activity generates revenue, activity is encouraged. Over time, this shapes behavior and expectations. Saving is often described as a logical process. In reality, it is deeply emotional. Rising costs create constant background pressure. Uncertainty consumes attention. Financial stress becomes part of daily life. When mental energy is spent maintaining stability, long-term saving becomes abstract, and abstract goals lose to immediate needs. This is not irresponsibility. It is cognitive overload. Under constant pressure, decision-making changes. People conserve mental energy. They simplify choices. Long-term planning becomes optional, not because it lacks value, but because it requires attention that feels unavailable. Over time, people adjust their expectations. What once felt temporary begins to feel permanent. Stress becomes background noise. Saving stops feeling achievable and starts feeling unrealistic. When expectations shrink, behavior follows. Not because people give up, but because the system quietly teaches them to adapt. Adaptation is often mistaken for failure. In reality, it is a rational response to persistent constraint. People learn what is realistic based on repeated experience. Modern money systems also create the appearance of stability. Credit replaces cash. Monthly payments replace ownership. Debt replaces savings. As long as payments are made, the system continues to function. But functioning is not the same as being secure. Many people feel financially functional, but not resilient. They are managing payments, not building buffers. They are maintaining access, not creating independence. The system continues to operate smoothly, even as individual resilience quietly declines. Over time, this struggle becomes normalized. People stop asking why saving feels impossible. They start accepting it as normal. Living paycheck to paycheck becomes common. Financial stress becomes expected. When something becomes normal, it stops being questioned. And when it stops being questioned, the system that produces it remains unchanged. This is how financial pressure survives across generations. Not through force, but through familiarity. Saving money feels impossible for many people, not because they lack discipline, but because modern money systems prioritize consumption, obligation, and constant movement. When essential costs rise faster than income, when spending is effortless and saving requires friction, saving stops being a personal habit and becomes a systemic challenge. Understanding this does not solve the problem, but it changes how responsibility is understood. Money is not just a personal test of willpower. It is a system with rules that most people were never taught,